From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana, Siddiqui. First, the headlines. Record-setting extreme winds affect at least 80 million across the U.S. in a single day. U.S. to invest $8.7 billion in communities adversely affected by COVID-19 pandemic. When you're a billionaire, your hobbies can slash your tax bill. 2 Muslims awarded top bravery honor in New Zealand mosque attack. Reconstruction of 2,500-year-old golden man begins in Kazakhstan. And Senegal national dish added to UNESCO heritage list. Our top story tonight. Record-breaking wind gusts of up to 100 miles per hour sent roofs flying and toppled tractor-trailers on highways from Colorado to Iowa yesterday. These affected parts of the Great Plains and the upper Midwest. About 300 severe wind reports came in across the regions throughout the day, with alerts impacting at least 80 million people. About 55 of the alerts were for hurricane-force thunderstorm wind gusts, according to the National Weather Service. That set a one-day national record. In 2021, more than one-third of state legislatures in the U.S. considered bills that would have limited courts' power or made them more political. That is according to a thorough accounting of legislative attacks on the independence of state courts published this week by the Brennan Center. Of the 153 bills that were introduced, 19 became law across 14 states. A new Georgia law, for example, makes it harder for state courts to expand polling hours. New laws in Kansas, Kentucky, and Texas also contain provisions that prohibit state judges and government officials from altering or suspending statutory election procedures. Passage of these laws impedes judges from protecting the sanctity of elections and the right to vote. The center says the very introduction of such bills, even if they do not become law, sends a chilling message to state courts: fall in line or become a political target. More than $8.7 billion will be invested in communities disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. Vice President Kamala Harris and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen Tuesday announced the money will be paid through the Emergency Capital Investment Program. The program aims to increase lending to small and minority-owned businesses, as well as low and moderate-income consumers in underserved communities, including rural areas. Yellen said communities of color often have been hurt most by COVID-19. The hobbies and side businesses of the ultra-wealthy have helped them get away with paying little or no income tax for as much as a decade at a time. Thoroughbred horses, auto racing, massive ranches, and luxury hotels are just some examples. That was the finding of a ProPublica analysis of IRS data. 6 of the 20 thoroughbreds selected to run in this year's Derby were owned by ultra-wealthy Americans. ProPublica found that billionaires can not only deduct the costs of buying, owning, and training thoroughbred horses, they can also treat all manner of pastimes and side pursuits as businesses, and then tap those businesses as an extra source of deductions. Dozens of women protested Thursday in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, demanding the right to education, jobs, and political representation from the Taliban government. Although public protests have generally been banned, the Taliban gave permission for the march. Participants chanted food, careers, and freedom, while others held placards demanding women get political posts. Some protesters carried banners echoing Taliban complaints that the international community had frozen billions of dollars in aid and assets. The Taliban have pledged a softer rule compared with their first stint in power in the 1990s. However, women are still largely excluded from government employment and secondary school education. New Zealand on Thursday awarded 10 people for the extraordinary courage they exhibited in the face of deadly Islamophobic attacks on mosques in the country in 2019. 2 Muslims, however, were awarded the country's highest honor of bravery, the New Zealand Cross. Since its establishment in 1999, it has only been awarded to 2 other people. It was given posthumously to Dr. Naeem Rashid, who was killed in one of the attacks, as well as Abdul. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said both exhibited great courage and bravery, challenging the gunmen with complete disregard for their own safety. She said the courage demonstrated by these New Zealanders was selfless and extraordinary. They have our deepest respect and gratitude for their actions on that day. On March 15, 2019, Brendan Tarrant, an Australian white supremacist, killed 51 people and injured 40 more at the Al Noor Mosque and Linwood Islamic Centre, both in Christchurch, New Zealand. The Hindu nationalist chief minister of the Indian state of Haryana offered support to Hindu vigilantes who have been harassing Muslim worshippers in the city of Gurgaon. Manohar Lal Khattar said that Muslim congregational prayers would not be tolerated in the open. The statement made last week follows months of harassment by vigilante groups who have targeted public spaces which have been used for Muslim prayers. The mob chanted slogans such as "Shoot the traitors" and attempted to shout down Muslim prayers with Hindu songs. They have also resorted to littering these sites with cow dung, leading police to have to intervene so as to hold back the mob from inflicting violence on the worshippers. The entire Muslim world will normalize relations with Israel once it withdraws to the 1967 boundary, according to Saudi Arabia's representative to the UN. Abdullah al-Muallimi made the claim during an interview with Arab News on Sunday. He said, "The official and latest Saudi position is that we are prepared to normalize relations with Israel as soon as Israel implements the elements of the Saudi peace initiative that was presented in 2002. That called for a return to the boundaries marked by the Green Line up until 1967, as well as an establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital." Al-Muallimi added that as soon as that happens, not only Saudi Arabia, but all 57 countries of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation would follow suit. Reconstruction of the 2,500-year-old new Altin Adam, or Golden Man, began with a ceremony Tuesday in Nur Sultan, the capital of Kazakhstan. Officials said the man, who was buried with clothes and items inlaid with gold over 2 centuries ago, was the heroic head soldier of the Samartian people. Archaeologist Arman Besenbayev made the discovery in 2019 during excavations at Taskopa Kurgan in western Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is a Muslim-majority country in Central Asia. A fake mosque has been found as part of a training facility for soldiers at Canadian Forces Base outside of Calgary. Canadian Forces officials say such training facilities need to be as real as possible to simulate the types of environments that soldiers might see on tour. A spokesperson for Canada's Department of National Defence said the British installation is the only one it is immediately aware of. But Mustafa Farouk, CEO of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, said it has raised concerns in the Muslim community. This is especially in light of the news of white supremacist elements in the forces. Bangladesh called in the U.S. ambassador Saturday to protest sanctions by Washington. The United States on Friday imposed financial sanctions on the Bangladeshi Police Unit Rapid Action Battalion, or RAB, and 6 of its current and former officers. U.S. officials said the officers were responsible for serious human rights abuses. RAB is accused of involvement in hundreds of disappearances and nearly 600 extrajudicial killings since 2018. Benazir Ahmad, a former Director General of the force, was also barred from entering the U.S. due to his involvement in gross violations of human rights. Ahmad is the national head of the South Asian country's more than 200,000-member police force. 7 current or former RAB officials were also sanctioned. The United Nations Cultural Agency UNESCO on Wednesday added Senegal's national dish to its cultural heritage list. The rice and fish platter is called thibu dian. Senegal's culture ministry had applied to include the dish, which is widely consumed in the West African country, on the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list in October. Thibu dian means rice with fish in Senegal's dominant language, Wolof. The northern Senegalese city of Saint Louis is believed to be the birthplace of the dish. The city, whose old center itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, borders the Atlantic Ocean and hosts a thriving fishing community. Senegal is a West African country with 96% Muslim population. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. For our in-depth analysis segment, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. Weather is in the news, so is climate change. So many tornadoes, so many deaths, and the wind is within a week coming back. Whole lot of people are at risk. What is going on here? Someone who knows this field, Richard Rood, is with us. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. Richard Rood is a professor of climate, space science and engineering at the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. So tell us, is it really abnormal what is happening, or it is the new normal, or is people are, worried about it for nothing?
So the last week has been extraordinary. You had the tornado outbreak in Kentucky, and then yesterday you had a storm that came off the Rocky Mountains. It organized, on the plains and grew on the plains. It caused an enormous windstorm. Yesterday saw more hurricane force winds recorded than ever before. It saw tornadoes in Minnesota, and it saw record high temperatures in large portions of the Midwest. I do not think there's anything normal about this event. It will prove to be outside of the range of historical behavior by quite a bit.
I was in Texas, and I found they were cooler than Chicago in those days.
Yeah, well, that happens at times, because when you look at the weather across the United States at any particular time, you often see a wave that will be perhaps, say, pushing up in the eastern part of the country, pushing down in the western part of the country. And the part of that wave that moves to the south will be cool, and it'll start to cut off the wave that's pushing up to the north. And what the weather systems, what the circulation of the atmosphere is trying to do is to smooth out these energy gradients, these temperature gradients. And so what you're seeing in an event like this is that on the cold side, it's really quite cold, because we've had this, we're in the winter and we're seeing the cooling up north. But on the warm side, because of the increasing warmth, the increasing moisture on the planet, it's very warm. So you see this contrast, and there's just an enormous amount of energy that the atmosphere has that it's trying to redistribute.
So how much of it is connected, Professor Rood, with the climate change?
So there are two ways I answer that question. I usually say that now that the climate has warmed as much as it has, it's impossible to have a weather event that is not influenced by that extra energy that's in the system. And what we will see almost assuredly in the next week or two is that people who do attribution who try to either say this sort of event is, certain percentage more likely because of the warming climate, will come out with, some sort of statistical number. But the way I look at this is that, we're in this warmer climate. We have this extraordinary amount of moisture available. And so every event is influenced by it. And then when you at least taking a quick look, when you see behavior that is giving us so many new records that are spread out over such a large geographical domain, when you're seeing tornado warnings further north in December than they've ever been before, all of these phenomena are consistent with the climate being warmer. So, this is the beginning of a period where the weather is going to be changing in response to all this energy. So that, this is not a one-off event, I would say. You're seeing, the statistics of weather changing, in front of our eyes right now. So, this sort of event has happened before, but the particular attributes of this event have a lot to do with climate change.
I killed my garden. Now it seems a little too early. If it was there, I would still be harvesting things. So the question I have for you is there's a whole lot of conversation about climate change and what we need to do to enhance the possibility of all the factors to avoid greenhouse impact and things like that. But are we preparing enough, or there is enough scholarship to focus on how do we live with the climate change if it is because it is happening?
It's happening, and there's a lot of talk about mitigation and the reduction of greenhouse gases, which is absolutely essential. But we are at a point where we need to be paying a lot more attention to adaptation and how are we going to live with climate change. Exactly your question. We need much more emphasis on that at this point. And that's a problem that's better addressed if we think about it and have strategies rather than having each individual do it on their own. And it's also a problem, again, of social justice, because those who have resources might be able to take care of themselves, but those who do not become, more vulnerable to these extreme weather events. So I think one of the biggest things that we are missing in our strategy and in our thinking is how do we adapt? We have important things like the infrastructure bill and the idea of improving resilience and building back better, but that's still only focused at a very small part of the problem. This is going to be changing how we think about, how we build, where we live, zoning laws. We are just beginning to appreciate the enormous challenge and the big changes that are going to be coming because of this.
So I would ask another question connected with that. So in terms of adaptation, in terms of how do we live, for example, my gardening, I killed my garden, I feel too soon. I mean, I would still be harvesting in Chicago weather, it seems like. So are there scholars and PR people, cities, are they concerned about that, hey, this is happening, we will do whatever we can to mitigate, but let's prepare for it?
Absolutely. There are scholars. I would say that my primary research is focused on adaptation, mostly in the Great Lakes region, and how to plan and what to expect. But there are a number of cities. In fact, Chicago is a city that's been a leading city in terms of developing a climate action plan. And there are a handful of cities that in the United States that have been out in front on this. I think if you were to go look at Europe, they've been on a country level, have been thinking about this and actually starting to implement some solutions for a decade or more. So they're out in front. So I think that there's a lot going on, but it's spread out, and there's not enough, I would say, recognition of the problem, the development of the tools we need, and the development of the policies that we will need in order to address adaptation, in a systematic and strategic way.
So you're saying that it should still be collectively done when it comes to adaptation and things like that. So it's that we will have to look for the cities, city councils, and the state to do that, or how it's going to happen?
So I feel as if, and this isn't just a personal feeling, is if that you look, especially in the United States, you see more capacity, more capability for this to happen at the city level. But if you were to say, look at a city, and I often pick Norfolk, Virginia, which has its own sea level rise, it's at sea level. There are threats of sea level rise. And there are many cities in that area, and it needs a regional approach to it, because it's very easy for one person or one city to do something that will hurt its neighbors, and it'll only be temporary. And so you get to a point that if, say, sea level rise is your problem, you need to look up and down the coast of at what scale do I need to address this? And then in sea level rise, you're moving to the situation where we're not going to be able to keep everything there. So you're going to be looking at strategies like, managed migration, because at least to a person like me, it makes more sense to think about how do you manage and move away rather than just having to be hit one event after another, and then the people can afford to move away. That then leaves the city with a hole in its tax base and its ability to respond. So I think that adaptation is very local, but it's not individual. It's regional. So I think people have to be thinking about how to work together and what are the problems that affect my region.
Well, thank you so much. Very wise, very thoughtful, and helpful, Professor Richard Root, for your time.
Thank you.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.